You can tell a lot about a person by what they do when someone else is grieving. Some send flowers. Some show up. And some check the attendance sheet first. When I got the call that my dad was gone, the world didn't end in thunder or fire. It just stopped. I stood there in the break room, holding my phone, hearing my sister's voice say the words I'd been afraid of for months. "He's gone, Erin. Dad's gone." The sound of the vending machine humming was louder than my heartbeat. I remember looking up at the clock, realizing I still had 3 hours left in my shift. My name is Erin Cole, and I've worked at Brighton Tech Solutions for 5 years. Assistant project coordinator. Efficient, reliable, invisible. The kind of employee who doesn't make waves. Until that day. I walked straight into my manager's office, tears still wet on my face. "Michael, I just got a call. My dad, he passed away. I need to go home." He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Erin, I'm really sorry, but we've got the Q4 presentation tomorrow. We're already short-staffed. Can you finish today's tasks and take tomorrow morning off?" For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "My dad just died," I whispered. He sighed, finally glancing up. "I know it's hard. I lost my dog last year, so I get it. But deadlines don't pause for personal issues." That sentence carved itself into me. Deadlines don't pause for personal issues. I nodded, numb, and walked out before the tears came back. Everyone else stared as I passed, pretending not to. I packed my things, shut down my computer, and left. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the sound of my heels on the cold tile floor. That night, I sat in my childhood home in Kansas, surrounded by the smell of coffee and grief. My sister held my hand while the funeral director spoke softly about dates and paperwork. I kept thinking about my manager, about how easily he dismissed me. How small he made something that felt so big. 2 days later, I opened my laptop. 37 missed emails. A message from Michael at the top. "Erin, need updates on the procurement report ASAP. No one else knows your formatting. Please advise. No sorry for your loss. No take your time. Just work." So I replied, out of office. "Emergency family loss. I'll return when I can." And then I turned off my phone. For 3 days, I didn't check anything. I helped my sister plan the service. I picked out my dad's favorite music, "Take It Easy" by the Eagles. I listened to his old voicemails, the ones where he still called me Pumpkin. When the funeral ended, I stood at his grave as the sun dipped low, the sky streaked in orange. I whispered, "I'll make you proud, Dad. I promise." And I meant it, but I didn't know that promise would become the spark that changed everything. Because when I finally returned to work the following Monday, the office was buzzing, whispers, half-turned glances, something in the air that wasn't quite normal. Michael was waiting by my desk, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Erin, we need to talk," he said. "You disappeared without approval. You left your team hanging. That's not acceptable behavior." I looked at him, still wearing the black dress from my father's service. "I told you my dad died." He shrugged. "And I told you we had deadlines." Something inside me broke then, but not the way it had before. This time, it didn't shatter me. It sharpened me. Because in that moment, I realized something he didn't. When you've already buried the person you loved most, you stop being afraid of people like him. The morning after I came back felt colder than usual, even though it was late spring. The office lights were too bright, the air conditioning too loud, and every click of a keyboard felt like judgment. I sat at my desk, pretending to focus, pretending not to hear the whispers. Michael's voice cut through the noise. "Team, let's gather for a quick update," he said, clapping his hands together like he was the hero of his own story. Everyone circled the table in the conference room, notebooks out, eyes down. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my tone even. "The procurement files are done. I sent the final version last night." He gave a stiff nod. "Good. I had to stay late cleaning up some of your missed work, so let's make sure we're aligned moving forward." I could feel everyone glance at me, their sympathy quiet but useless. I smiled politely. Noted. Inside, I was a storm. When the meeting ended, I went to the restroom and just stood there, staring at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't weak anymore. She looked tired, yes, but also done being treated like she didn't matter. That night, I stayed late, after everyone had left. The office hummed with the low sound of printers and flickering lights. I opened a folder on my desktop titled Budget Audits. Inside were months of financial reports I'd helped Michael organize, except now that I was reading them with clear eyes, the numbers didn't add up. There were duplicate invoices, false expense entries, and vendor names that didn't exist. I clicked through each one, my stomach tightening. He was padding the department's budget, submitting fake reimbursements under ghost accounts. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. My grief had turned to something sharper now. Not revenge. Not anger. Just purpose. The next day, I went to HR. I spoke to Sandra, the HR director, a woman in her 50s with soft eyes and a clipboard that could decide fates. I told her about the files, about the inconsistencies, about how Michael had denied my leave the day my father died. She listened carefully, her face unreadable. "Erin, these are serious allegations," she said. "Do you have proof?" I slid a flash drive across the table. Every document, every timestamp. She took it without a word. "We'll look into it." Walking out of that office, I didn't feel triumphant. Just steady. The next few days were tense. Michael didn't look at me directly, but I could feel his suspicion growing. Once, he stopped by my desk, leaning on the divider like a hawk. "Everything good, Erin?" I smiled faintly. "Just keeping up with deadlines." The corner of his mouth twitched. He walked away. By Friday, Sandra called me back in. "We've reviewed the data," she said quietly. "You were right. There's been significant misuse of funds under Michael's credentials. The board will be informed today." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Erin," she continued, her tone softer now, "thank you for coming forward. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry for your loss." It was the first time anyone at that company had said those words to me. That afternoon, I watched from my desk as two men in suits walked into Michael's office. The blinds closed, voices rose, and 20 minutes later, he walked out pale and furious, his badge in his hand. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. As the elevator doors closed behind him, the entire floor fell silent. For a brief moment, no one typed, no one spoke. Then Sandra appeared, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "The position's open," she said. "You're next in line." That night, as I locked up and walked into the fading light of the parking lot, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "I did it, Dad." The air was cool, still, peaceful. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because some wounds don't heal just because justice is served. Some wounds need truth and forgiveness to close. The Monday after Michael was escorted out, the office felt too quiet, like everyone was afraid to breathe. His name wasn't spoken, but it hung in the air anyway, sharp and heavy. His desk sat empty, papers still scattered like someone had just stepped out for coffee and never came back. I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was strange. Hollow. People avoided my eyes. A few offered polite smiles, the kind you give someone who's survived a storm you didn't want to be caught in. I overheard whispers, "She's the one who reported him." "Yeah, but he had it coming." I heard she was out when her dad died. Cold timing, huh? The world moves on fast, even after the truth comes out. But guilt lingers, even when it's undeserved. Sandra promoted me a week later, project lead, Michael's old title. She handed me the key card and said, "You earned this, Erin." Earned it. I smiled, thanked her, but deep down, it didn't feel like earning. It felt like surviving. The first day in that office, I sat in his chair, staring at the dent his coffee mug had left in the desk. I thought about the way he dismissed me, the way he made me feel small. And now, here I was, sitting where he used to sit, proof that karma works, even if it takes its time. But peace didn't come with the promotion. Late one night, as I was finishing reports, an email popped up from an unfamiliar address, m.warner.personal@gmail.com. Subject, "You think you won?" My chest tightened. I clicked it open. "You got what you wanted. Hope it feels good destroying someone's life over a few missing numbers. You didn't even know the full story. Enjoy the office while you can." I read it twice. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From confusion. The next morning, I went straight to Sandra. She frowned when she read it. We blocked his company access. This must be personal email. I'll notify legal, but don't respond. I don't plan to, I said. But I couldn't stop thinking about his words. You didn't know the full story. That night, I pulled up the old audit files again. I checked the timestamps, the routing numbers, the IP addresses. And then I saw something I hadn't before. Some of the fraudulent invoices didn't trace back to Michael's computer. They came from a shared terminal. In fact, from mine. I froze. My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. Someone had used my login months before my dad died. And the approvals, most had my initials, auto-filled by a digital signature I didn't remember authorizing. I leaned back, staring at the glowing screen. No, that's not possible. I barely slept that night. My mind ran through every interaction, every time Michael had left his office door open, every time I'd shared my password for a deadline. Had he been covering for someone else? Or had someone set him up? The next day, I confronted Sandra privately. I think the reports might not be what they seem, I said, my voice low. Some of those files came from my workstation. She looked up sharply. Are you saying you're involved? No, I said quickly. I'm saying someone used my account. Sandra nodded slowly, but I could see the shift in her eyes, the flicker of doubt, quiet but unmistakable. We'll review the data again. For the next week, the office turned cold again. I could feel people watching me the way they used to watch Michael. That Friday, as I packed my things to leave, my computer chimed. A new message. No sender listed. Just one line of text. You should have listened before you acted. Then nothing. The email vanished, deleted before I could even screenshot it. I stared at the empty screen, the glow reflecting off my trembling hands. Justice had a funny way of twisting itself inside out. And I was starting to wonder if I'd brought down the wrong man. I spent the weekend replaying everything, every meeting, every file I'd signed, every late night I'd stayed to finish work Michael said was urgent. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. He was cruel, yes. He was arrogant. But fraud? It didn't feel like him. He didn't need to steal. He needed control. Someone else wanted the money. By Monday, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I stayed late after everyone left, dim lights buzzing over empty cubicles, and logged into the old project archives. Most of the financial records were locked under administrative credentials, but Michael's account had left trails, fragments of encrypted folders, half-deleted logs. I followed the breadcrumbs. Deep in a shared drive, buried under a folder labeled Q4 Presentations, I found it, a series of hidden subfolders named after client codes. Inside, payment records routed not to Michael's name, but to an external contractor listed as B. Nellis. I didn't recognize it. But the routing address, Finance Temp 02, belonged to a workstation I'd seen before. In our office. Brittany Nellis, senior accountant. Friendly. Always helpful. Always the first to cover for Michael when he was out. My stomach twisted. I searched deeper. Dozens of transactions tied to her temporary contracts, each one overlapping with my logins, each one using my digital signature as approval. She'd used my access. Framed me. And when Michael noticed the discrepancies, she'd pinned it on him before anyone else could. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. The realization was heavy, suffocating. She had set us both up. I printed everything, every document, every timestamp, and slipped them into a plain manila folder. Then I locked my computer and walked straight to HR. But Sandra wasn't in her office. Her assistant looked up from her desk. She left for the evening. Big audit review with the board in the morning. I hesitated, then handed her the folder. Make sure Sandra gets this first thing tomorrow. It's urgent. I barely slept that night. My mind was racing between fear and fury, between guilt and relief. For months, I thought I'd taken down a villain. Now I realized I might have destroyed a man who'd been trying to protect his team from something worse. The next morning, I got to the office early. The folder was gone from Sandra's desk. The board meeting was already in progress upstairs. 2 hours later, she called me in. Her expression was pale, unreadable. Erin, we verified everything. The contractor was falsifying records. You were right. I exhaled, dizzy with relief. But there's more, she continued. Michael filed an appeal before his termination was finalized. His attorney submitted evidence that aligns with what you just found. My heart stopped. So, he knew. She nodded. He was investigating her himself. The fraud reports were his attempt to trace the theft quietly. He didn't tell you, maybe he couldn't. But everything you exposed, it helped clear him. For a long time, I couldn't speak. The air felt thick, the hum of the lights deafening. Sandra's voice softened. He's agreed to a settlement, no charges. The company's handling it quietly. Brittany's been taken into custody. I walked out of her office feeling like I was standing outside my own body. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Erin. The voice was tired but steady. It was Michael. I heard what you did, he said. I should thank you, I guess. I swallowed hard. I didn't know the truth. I thought, I know what you thought, he said. Then, after a pause, and I deserved some of it. I was an ass. But I wasn't the thief. I know, I whispered. I'm sorry. Another silence. Then, softer, your dad would be proud. You did the right thing, even if it got messy. The line clicked dead before I could answer. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, realizing I hadn't cleared my conscience. I'd only uncovered another kind of guilt. Because sometimes, justice doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a debt you can't repay. When the truth finally surfaced, the office changed again, but not in the way I expected. There were no apologies, no celebration, no justice parade. Just silence. The kind that fills hallways after an earthquake, when everyone's pretending the ground didn't just move beneath them. Brittany was gone. HR made a short announcement, an internal discrepancy has been resolved. That was it. No mention of her name. No mention of Michael. No mention of me. But whispers travel faster than memos. She was innocent? Wait, then who's actually in trouble? Guess that's why they didn't fire her. People stared as I passed. Not with judgment this time, but with something worse, uncertainty. They didn't know what to believe. And in the corporate world, uncertainty is a scar that never fades. A week later, I got another message. From m.warner@brightontech.com. Subject: Thank you. The company offered to reinstate me. I declined. I'm done with this place. But I wanted to tell you, you did good, Erin. Even if it didn't look like it. Take care of yourself. I read it 3 times before closing my laptop. I felt relief, sadness, and something I hadn't felt since my dad died, closure. The next morning, I walked into the office and saw Sandra standing by the window, watching the city wake up. She turned as I approached. He's not coming back, she said. He wanted me to tell you that he forgives you. That word, forgives, hit harder than any accusation. I nodded, my throat tight. He didn't owe me that. No, she said softly. But he gave it anyway. That's how people heal. That night, I stayed late again, just like the first time I'd found the fraud. The lights hummed, the city glowed beyond the glass. I looked around the office, the same cubicles, the same computers, but it all felt different. I wasn't invisible anymore. Before leaving, I opened my desk drawer. Inside was the small photo I'd kept hidden since the funeral, Dad and me at a baseball game, both of us grinning, sunburned, alive. I traced the edges and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Doing the right thing isn't easy. But it's always worth it." On my way out, the janitor nodded at me. "Long night, Miss Cole?" I smiled. "Last one." Outside, the city air was cool and alive. I looked up at the office tower, at the window that used to be Michael's, and thought about how grief and justice had twisted together, how both had broken me before putting me back together stronger. Somewhere I hoped he'd found peace. Somewhere I hoped I had too. Because the truth is, redemption isn't about winning. It's about finally laying down the weight you've been carrying. And as I walked to my car under the streetlights, I felt something I hadn't in months. Freedom. 2 months passed. The rhythm of life began to sound different, lighter, steadier. The office buzzed as usual, but it didn't own me anymore. I showed up, did my work, and left on time. No staying late. No chasing approval. Just quiet purpose. Then one morning, Sandra called me in. Erin, there's a leadership workshop next quarter in Chicago. They want you to attend as a guest speaker. Topic: Ethics in Corporate Crisis. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. You want me to teach ethics? She smiled. You lived it. I laughed softly, but my throat tightened. I thought about how far I'd come from the woman begging for one day off to say goodbye to her father, to someone being asked to speak about integrity. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun sink behind the rooftops. My sister called. How's work? She asked. Different, I said. But good. You sound like Dad when you say that, she teased. I smiled. Guess I'm finally learning. The next week, I started writing my speech. But every time I tried to type, my thoughts drifted, not to the company, not to the scandal, but to Michael. I kept thinking about that last message. Take care of yourself. He'd been right. I'd spent so long fighting to be seen, to be respected, to make things fair, that I'd forgotten what taking care of myself even meant. So I booked a ticket. Not to Chicago, not yet, but to my hometown in Kansas. The same place where everything had fallen apart. When I got there, I visited my dad's grave for the first time since the funeral. The grass had grown over, the headstone smooth and cold under my hand. I knelt down and whispered, I kept my promise, Dad. I made you proud. The wind moved through the trees, soft and warm, almost like an answer. I stayed there a long time, watching the sun filter through the branches. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I just breathed. When I flew back home, I felt lighter. The next Monday, I gave my presentation at the Leadership Summit. I told the room full of executives that power isn't in position, it's in empathy. That real leadership is measured not by control, but by compassion. When it ended, people clapped, but what mattered most was the quiet moment afterward, when one woman came up to me with tears in her eyes and said, "My boss denied me time off when my mother died. I thought I was weak for caring. You made me feel seen." I smiled, holding her hand. You're not weak. You're human. That night, alone in the hotel room, I opened my email one last time. A new message sat there, no subject line. Heard about your talk. You did good. I stared at it, smiling through tears. No anger. No pain. Just peace. Because maybe redemption doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's a quiet message from someone you once thought was the enemy, reminding you that even broken people can find their way back to good. And maybe that was enough. Spring arrived with a kind of warmth I hadn't felt in years. The city trees bloomed pink, the air smelled of rain and new beginnings. For the first time in a long while, I woke up without a knot in my chest. Life had slowed down, but in the best way. I still worked at Brighton Tech, though I no longer lived for the deadlines or the titles. My mornings were quiet, my evenings filled with peace instead of exhaustion. Sometimes that's what healing looks like, not fireworks, just calm. A few weeks after the conference, I got an unexpected letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was a single page. Erin, I've started a consulting firm. Small, honest work this time. Helping companies clean up the messes people like me used to cause. I'm not proud of who I was, but I'm trying to be better. I meant what I said before. Your dad would be proud. You taught me something I should have known all along. People are not replaceable. Take care. Michael. I read it 3 times, smiling through quiet tears. It wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about understanding. About knowing that sometimes, the people who hurt you the most can still change. That weekend, I went back to my father's favorite park. The same place he used to take me when I was little, back when the world still felt simple. I sat on the old bench overlooking the lake, the same one where he'd once told me, kindness isn't weakness, pumpkin, it's courage in disguise. I pulled a small notebook from my bag and began writing. Not about grief or loss or betrayal. About strength. About how we keep going even when we're broken. About how we find light in the people we least expect. As the sun dipped low, I closed the notebook and whispered, I did it, Dad. The water shimmered gold, the sky soft and endless. Somewhere deep down, I felt it, the peace that comes when you finally stop fighting the past. On my way home, I passed a cafe window. My reflection stared back, the same woman, but lighter, freer, alive. I smiled at her. Because I finally understood, justice isn't revenge. It's becoming the person they never thought you could be. And forgiveness? That's not for them. It's for you. As I walked away, the city lights flickered on one by one, like small, shining reminders that even after darkness, life goes on. And so did I.